Use headphones for a better experience.
I had been looking for a cheap place to rent, so when I found an affordable basement apartment, it felt like a steal. Sure, it was a bit dark and damp, but the rent was low and I needed to save money. The landlord was an older man named Mr. Garrett, who seemed friendly enough. But he was also unusually insistent that I keep to myself, telling me not to poke around too much. The first few nights were quiet. I started to get comfortable, thinking maybe I'd lucked out. Then, on the fourth night, I heard something strange. It was late, probably around 2 a.m., and I was lying in bed. A faint scratching sound drifted up from beneath the floorboards, as if someone was scraping something sharp along the wood. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was maybe pipes or just the usual creaks of an old building. But the scratching continued, getting louder and more frantic, until it sounded like nails clawing at the floor. I lay there, frozen, waiting for it to stop. Eventually, it did, leaving a disturbing silence in its wake. The next morning, I asked Mr. Garrett about it, hoping for an easy explanation. He gave me a stern look and said, "This building's old. You'll hear things. Just ignore it." His tone made it clear that he wasn't open to questions, so I let it go. But that night, the scratching returned. This time, it was accompanied by faint whispers. I couldn't make out any words, but the sound of voices beneath my floor made my skin crawl. I told myself it was just my imagination, but as the nights passed, the sounds grew clearer and closer. It was as if people were talking, no, pleading, beneath the floorboards. One night, curiosity got the better of me, and I began to pull up one of the loose floorboards to investigate. Suddenly, I heard footsteps outside my door. I quickly put the floorboard back in place and returned to bed. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. It read, "Stop digging." No name, no explanation, just that warning. I felt uneasy, but I tried to carry on with life. Then about a week later, the sounds intensified. This time, I was sure I could hear distinct words. "Help me, please, let us out." I was gripped by a terrifying thought. Could there actually be people down there? The next day, I decided to confront Mr. Garrett. I knocked on his door, but there was no answer. I went back to my apartment, but something felt wrong. When I stepped inside, I noticed a faint smell, damp, stale, and sickly sweet. I found a small patch of the floorboard slightly raised. It looked as though someone had been trying to lift it from underneath. I knelt down, heart pounding, and pulled up the board. Beneath it was a hollow space with narrow, dark passageways. I could feel the cold air rising up as if something was breathing beneath the floor. Then, in the dim light, I saw something. Eyes looking up at me. I stumbled back, the board falling back into place. I thought I was losing my mind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was trapped down there. That night, I packed my things, preparing to leave first thing in the morning. As I tried to sleep, the scratching and whispers became louder, more desperate. And then, for the first time, I heard footsteps directly below me. They moved slowly, tracing my movements, following me from room to room. I sat in the dark, waiting for dawn, trying to block out the sounds. Just before sunrise, I heard a soft knock on my door. I froze. The knock was slow, rhythmic, and insistent, as though whoever was on the other side had all the time in the world. I held my breath, too afraid to move. Eventually, the knocking stopped, and I heard footsteps shuffling away. The next morning, I found another note under my door. "You should leave." No signature, no explanation, just that ominous suggestion. I decided to pack up immediately, unable to ignore the growing sense of dread. As I made my way down the hall to the exit, I saw Mr. Garrett watching me from his doorway. His eyes were cold, almost satisfied. "You don't belong here," he said. "People like you. They don't last." He didn't say anything more as I left. After I moved out, I couldn't stop thinking about those sounds, those whispers, and the feeling that there were others trapped in that building. I tried to research the place, but there was no record of anything unusual. It was as if the building's secrets were buried deep, hidden from view. To this day, I still wonder what was under those floorboards. I wonder who or what I left behind. But one thing is certain, some things are better left alone. Sometimes, your instincts are all the warning you need. What's the lesson here? Sometimes, when something doesn't feel right, it's because it isn't. The desire to uncover the unknown, to dig deeper, can sometimes lead us into darkness we aren't prepared for. Not all mysteries need solving. Sometimes, leaving things as they are, trusting your instincts, is the best way to protect yourself. When something feels wrong, don't wait for proof. Respect your intuition and walk away.
Don't miss out on the scares. Go subscribe to the channel for terrifying stories, legend breakdowns, and more. Turn on notifications and experience horror like never before.